This true crime story is the stuff of nightmares and full of twists and turns. It is a story of torture and the murder of Carla Lenz. And it is the most intense crime story I've probably ever told. I believe this man was possibly one of the most sick men who ever walked the earth. I must give a warning before we begin of sexual and sadistic torture, which may involve graphic discussions. Your discretion is advised. And if I spell things out, it's because it's words YouTube dislikes. So, hello, my name is Holly, and this is the Murder She Shed, the place we discuss the dead right from my little she shed. If you enjoy the way I tell true crime, then hit that subscribe. If you hate my rhymes, then never mind. Let's begin. Emily Lenz, who was born and raised just outside of Phillips, Wisconsin, to parents Jean and Carolyn Lenz. Wisconsin is often called America's Dairyland. They are most well known for their cheese, over 600 varieties. Phillips, Wisconsin is a rural community of a little over 1,000 people. Emily's father worked hard making a living for his 5 children. He not only was a truck driver, but worked on road construction. They were a happy family until tragedy struck. As soon as Emily graduated, she ended up marrying a man named John Weber. She told her parents she was in love with John and was ready for marriage. So the couple tied the knot in August of 1986. Just 3 months after the couple married on November 12, 1986, her sister, 17-year-old Carla Lenz, vanished without a trace. Emily was traumatized because her and Carla had a close bond. Authorities could not find any trace of what had happened to Carla. Emily's marriage became rocky not long after this, which compiled on top of her sister's disappearance was too much for her to handle. So for a short time, Emily moved back in with her parents. She eventually went back to John, but it continued to be a rocky relationship, and they would separate and get back together several times. Then on September 3rd, 1988, Emily was attacked by a man with a knife. He grabbed her from behind by her hair and stuck a knife to her throat. He then put duct tape over her eyes and mouth and her hands behind her back. The man then gave Emily a pen and paper and forced her to write a letter to her family in order to explain her absence. He threatened to cut off her BREAST if she did not write the letters. Emily complied. Her hands were shaking so bad. She had no sight, so the letters were almost illegible. The man had taken her to a field, ordered her out of the vehicle, and told her to strip. He then walked up to her and punched her hard in the chest. This knocked the air out of Emily, and she collapsed to the ground. Emily heard his feet leaving, but then she heard what sounded like the sound of a trunk shutting. Emily did not know the man had taken a shovel out of the trunk and now was walking back towards her. Before Emily knew what happened, she was being beat with the shovel, and then he suddenly stopped. She just heard silence. Was terrified of what could be coming next. He then stuck the knife up to Emily's left BREAST and cut her above and on the side of it. Emily could suddenly feel burning pain, but did not know why until she felt the blood rolling down her stomach. The man then turned Emily on her stomach and cut deep gashes into her leg. After this, he then rolled Emily back onto her back. She heard a lighter and smelled cigar smoke. The man then took the cigar and began burning her face, chest, and private area with the end of the cigar. He then just casually smoked the rest of the cigar, put it out, and then grabbed some safety pins and stuck one into her left BREAST. The assault would end with the man essaying Emily with a wheelbarrow handle that had been broken off of an old wheelbarrow that he had found on the land they were on. Emily fell unconscious. When she woke up, she was at the ICU in extreme pain. Emily was interviewed by officers while still in the hospital, telling them what had occurred and that she did not know who the man was. Emily's husband, John, stayed faithfully by her side, lovingly caring for her while she was in the ICU. Emily was interviewed 2 more times while at the hospital. While Emily was being interviewed for the 3rd time, John excused himself to go to the restroom. As soon as Emily knew John was out of earshot, she whispered, "My husband did it," to the officers. John was immediately arrested. Emily told the officers that John had told her he had a surprise for her, and then he drove her to some property that his parents owned. After stopping, this is when he held the knife to her, duct taped her, including the blindfold, and did all the things she had discussed with the officers before. John had then drove Emily back home, where he put her in the bathtub and cleaned her wounds up. John then realized she was more seriously injured than he could fix. So he drove her to the hospital. And as she was weaving in and out of consciousness, he told her exactly what she needed to say to authorities. She also said during the attack, John had 2 voices. One was his normal voice, and the other voice called himself Natus, or Satan spelled backwards. Emily was too fearful not to obey, and then after she had a clearer head, realized that next time he would kill her. Emily was in the hospital for a total of 16 days in ICU. Officers got a warrant in order to search John's car while Emily was still in the hospital. They thoroughly searched the vehicle, and right before they were fixing to finish, they happened to find an unmarked cassette tape hidden in the car. One of the officers turned on the ignition switch and stuck in the tape. What they heard would blow their mind. They immediately recognized John's voice as the one talking on the tape. The first thing he did is address Emily. Then he started describing the way in which he had brutally and sadistically tortured Carla, Emily's 17-year-old sister, 2 years earlier. Officers headed to the hospital to speak to Emily and let her know they had found a tape in which John had confessed to her sister's murder and asked her if she had ever heard the tape. She stated that she had not. John would later confirm that she had not heard the tape. John claimed he had recorded the tape to scare his wife, but had never played it for her. John initially denied killing Carla, but eventually admitted it to authorities, even drawing a map to her body. They located Carla's remains in a shallow grave. They also found a bra, panties, and a purple jacket, and a syringe. When the trial began, the jury had to listen to John describe the graphic details of Carla's murder on this tape. John said that he had asked Carla to go with him in order to discuss his marital problems with her sister, and he drove her to the same property that he had assaulted Emily on. Once there, he told Carla that he had a surprise for her. He then reached into the back seat, took out a .25 caliber pistol, shoved it into her mouth, and told Carla to take off her clothes. Then bound Carla with duct tape in the same manner in which he had his wife. He burned her BREAST with a cigar and also slapped them. He spanked her 40 times with a plank he had found on the property. He then made her perform ORAL on him. He assaulted her with beer bottles and then took 2 wheelbarrow handles and inserted both of them in private areas. He then inserted 50 safety pins into her BREAST. John then finished her off by injecting lighter fluid into her BREAST with a syringe. At this point, she became unconscious, and so he then stepped on her throat till she died. He then stuck her body in the trunk of his car and drove home. Then John said, after he got home, he had got this really wild idea and opened the trunk back up, took his knife and cut the calf muscle off of Carla's leg. He brought it in the house, cleaned it up, skinned it, sliced it up, and made himself some patties out of Carla's leg. On the tape, he discussed how he was going to cut off his wife's BREAST and eat it with her still alive and watching him eat it. And let her live with the thought of what he had done to her. The jury cried while listening to the tape, and when John discussed cutting off her calf, a juror gasped and asked to be excused, in which the judge called for an immediate recess. John's parents also testified. They stated around the age of 5, John had started 3 fires and had rubbed feces on his grandmother's dress. At the age of 10, his mother found bondage magazines in his bedroom. She destroyed them, but later found more. He had also shot several holes in a wall at home. As he got older, he became a loner. John's sister then testified about a time when John was 15 and pointed a gun at her head and told her to come with him, taking her to the bathroom, where he taped her eyes and hands. He placed something in her hand and asked her if she knew what it was. The sister stated she never knew what it was, but it was wooden. He let her go, but later that same year, he gave her a cassette tape. And when she played it, she stated it said, "I have to see you with your clothes off." After John's sister started college in 1980, she came home one day, and upon entering the house, John hit her over the head with a bottle. Their father came home and found chains, rope, tape, an axe, and a shovel in the family garage. John's parents put him in a group home after this, attempting to get him help. With his parents' approval, at the age of 17, he enlisted in the Army. He was honorably discharged just 3 years later, and not long after this is when he had married Emily. On March 18, 1989, John was sentenced to life plus 164 years and 9 months in prison. John was suspected of another young lady's death in Wisconsin around this same time in 1987. Her name was Marshall Hanson, but he has never been officially connected to her death. Her death remains unsolved to this day. Here is a current photo of John, who is now 59 years old and incarcerated in Green Bay Correctional Institution. Well, guys, this was a rough one to get through, so I left you with some bloopers of me and Simon. Thank you so much for joining me for Wacky World Wednesday. I love y'all. Bye. The letters were almost ineligible. Legible. Isn't ineligible the word I'm trying to think of? I think so. It just doesn't sound right, does it? Oh. No sight. The letters were almost illegible. That felt like I was trying too hard to say it, didn't it? And now was walking back towards her. Towards her. I wish I could speak. It really helped when I made these videos. Lord Jesus, help me. Oh, Emily knew she had to tell authorities. Emily was hospitalized. It's like spit. Hospitalized. Not right. Hospitalized. I'm putting such stuff in it don't belong, I think. Emily was put in the hospital. Let's go there. His mother found bondage magazines in his bedroom. She destroyed them, but later found more. But how did he get the bondage magazines? Did Dad enjoy bondage? So I've left you with some bloopers of me and Simon. Thank you so much. Wacky World Wednesday. I'm sure y'all love that added effect. Bring you some excitement for the day. Yesterday, my husband almost got bit by a copperhead. I kid you not. It would have been my fault. He would have, well, if he pulled through, which I'm sure he would. I don't think copperheads kill people, but it wouldn't have been good. He would have never let me live that down. He wanted to go to the back and plant some seed. And so we rode the four-wheeler to the back of our land. We have 20 acres. The dogs followed us and we rode back there. I dropped him off because I was going to run with Simon on the four-wheeler. And he got off to throw his seed everywhere. And so I took off on the four-wheeler. I planning on going that far, but me and Simon ended up going far. And so by the time I come back, he wasn't in the field anymore planting the seed. I was like, which way did he go? and I guessed right. And I happened to encounter him down one of the trails, wooded trails, real wooded. I said, well, get on. And so my husband got on, and we went a few feet on the four-wheeler. There, just a few feet before I picked him up, was a longest copperhead I have ever seen. But my thought was, if I hadn't come when I did, and I'd waited a few more seconds, he might have stepped on that thing. And how guilty would I felt for running off with the four-wheeler? Because at least God took care of us. Now my husband won't kill me. Oh, you know how I am about snakes. One thing, I love all animals. I know there's snake lovers out there, but I am not one of them. I joined this snake site on the Facebook or whatever, and these people are fanatic about snakes. I just joined it to learn about identification, which I'm pretty good about IDing snakes. I joined it for that, and these people freak out about snakes. These people love snakes. And I'm like, what's wrong with y'all? Ugh, I love all animals. I am a big animal lover. But snakes, I will do a big hard pass on that. Thank you. I'm just here to ID them. I'm not here to fall in love with them, okay? So get off my back, all right, people? Tell them bye. Say, I've already had a fun day. My mom's already walked me, four-wheeled me, everything fun just for me. He is the most loving dog I've ever had. My son is obsessed with me. There's like a stalking obsession going on. Look at that. Loyalty, times a billion. Say, I love y'all. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being my mommy's friend. If you want to say hello.